first writing workshop, and Counterpult is a reading series for queer, trans, BIPOC folks in
Okay,
Brooklyn.
got it. And are you in Brooklyn now, or are you in the West Coast?
I'm on the West Coast, so I'm in LA now.
All right, terrific. Okay, welcome. Okay. Put that. And do you host the Counterpulse reading series?
Yes,
Okay.
we've had to do the digital pivot, but usually it's in person.
Well, and that allows you to be in LA
Right.
and still do it. I
Exactly.
have I have led workshops and like swept my floor, my kitchen. I have done the dishes and taught middle school. It is a
Yes.
trip.
And so we're just reading for about 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah, 4 or 5, and then yeah, just 4 or 5 minutes.
Perfect.
And what I'm going to do is I'll welcome everyone. Um, I'll introduce everyone by name. Before you read, I'll give folks your short intro. Then, when you're done, I'll give Imani their short intro. And then, when they're done, short intro, then Felida, then short intro for K-Ming. And then I will just throw out a general question. Um, I think I think what's important is how did we find our space when we were starting? And sometimes we started in trauma, sometimes our roots of becoming a writer and trying to make our space was something that we had to fight. I know I had to fight for that. And this is like in the early 90s at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. I
Yes.
knew that I had to like really fight. It was a struggle. I like to think that it's less of a struggle almost 25, 30 years later, but there's always going to be a struggle. So I just wanted to maybe respond to that statement, and then we'll just keep it organic. And then please feel free to bring up any points that you feel is necessary that happens. I think that we can move this spaceship together. I say spaceship because I'm seeing all of these galactic imagery all around me. So, oh, it is 6:34, and I'm wondering whether we should start. Let's see what we got here. Oh, good to go. All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Reggie Kibiko. Give yourself some snaps, a big round of applause. I am so stoked to moderate one of the most exciting panels I can ever moderate right now. You are at the right time and the right place. This is Claiming Space, Decentering Poetic Narratives, because the shit is out of control. As a queer brown person, I have been writing poems. I have been taking Epsom salt baths. I have been struggling with my disco light, trying to make sense of where we are. And with me are four phenomenal writers who I am excited to be inspired by in this panel. Before I say their names, I want to give a big, huge shout out to the DC Center and Center Arts Director for OutWrite, Dave Ring. Thank you so much for your commitment to this annual event. Also, shout out to Marlena, who curated this dream panel of fabulous queer writers. So before we go into a discussion, I've asked all of our four guests. With us, we have Nicole Shawan Jr., we have Imani Sims, and we have Felida Hicks. Did I say that right? Felida Hicks. And we have Kei Ming Chang. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the founder of Roots Wound Words Writing Workshop. You will also find Nicole Shawan Jr. hosting Counterpulse, a Brooklyn reading series. Right now, we welcome Nicole Shawan Jr. from Los Angeles, from California. So welcome. Without any further ado, snaps to the phenomenal Nicole Shawan Jr.
I truly appreciate it. I'm going to be reading a piece called We Came. This is a lyric essay, and I hope you all enjoy. We came from all 5 boroughs. Your Tim smacked that concrete curb, a silver world at your back, 40 off to your side, the bridge miles away. You headed past the matchbox frame forest, increased lawns sprouting patchy like beards. On Sutphin, you waited for the Q6. Planes hummed high until you dipped low into the subway. You packed a pocket seat, legs spread wide as your scowl. The E-train shuttled you forward like a bullet through barrel. A 20-year-old woman was hospitalized and suffered a broken spine after being attacked by a man using anti-gay slurs, according to the NYPD. The man fled in the subway at a Forest Hill Queens stop, NBC News. We came from all 5 boroughs. You walked the neck of weather-worn road, between cast iron hedges and towering brick, beyond ash black rubber squares, waxing ground chandeliered by squeaky swing sets. You followed the mossy river that dandled your nose and headed down the hill to catch a dollar van. On the ferry, you rode the lowest level. Sitting outdoors, you sucked smoke from the blunt pinched where your index met thumb. Your do-rag's tail wind-slapped like a cape. The city before you beckoned, the uptown one, half a harbor away. 23-year-old Taylor D'Souza had to get stitches after her Uber driver assaulted her. You fucking lesbian, get out of my car, he screamed while striking her in the head. According to WPIX 11 New York, he told me he'd chop me up and throw me in the river, D'Souza said. We came from all 5 boroughs, 1 park away from where black boys opened high-rise doors and white girls slept in Amsterdam Ave apartments. You danced along 115th Street. Your Air Force Ones pounded like palms against Panerettas. Morningside Park, jam-packed with barbecue grills, bumped bass at your back. The trees gave dap as you swayed along. On 8th, you descended into the damp summer subway. Box braids packed at your waist. You jumped the turnstile, hopped the D end, whipping your hair behind the shoulder, faced its closing doors. You unpacked the peach gloss from your back pocket, pursed your lips before the reflection, blew a kiss at your own face. Dorcian said that Aquino punched her in the face several times and choked her, spouting anti-gay slurs. She had no way of knowing that Aquino was an NYPD officer wearing plain clothes. So, when other officers came running toward the altercation, she presumed that they were there to save her, but that's not what happened. Instead of helping me and my girlfriend in arresting our attacker, more officers piled on top of me, slamming me onto the pavement and putting their knees into my back, the advocate. Thank you so very much. If you want to read the rest of that lyric essay, you can check it out in Emerge. It's the Lambda Literary Anthology that was published earlier this year. I think you're muted.
Yes, I was like praising. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicole Shawan Jr. If you just joined us, this is Claiming Space, Decentering Poetic Narratives. Our next guest author and alchemist is none other than Imani Sims, who's from with us from the Bay. Imani Sims is a quintuple Aquarius with Gemini rising, hence the galactic background there. Imani will be leading a class on tarot on August 29. Want to check that out? Check out Imani's website, alchemyinabar.com. Without any further ado, I turn the mic over to Imani Sims.
Hey y'all, it's good to be here. I'm gonna read some tiny poems that I strung together to be a big poem. Here we go. Even the moon is a Black woman. She knew in gold chains lets the dark envelop her, shimmers in skies so black you only see her adornment. Stare and wonder at this renewal. This naked body willing to take the night hostage. Her body bends itself a power full and black. Her hips so wide she carried the mountains into black ass sky. She smiled like fresh shade glistened against deep black skin. Knows this world better prep for the God in her black ass step. Creator of galaxies on her breath. Each inhale contained the universe, infinite color and well-lit glimmer. The crown is often split, but she beat dragon, nostrils of smoke, diamonds herself a weapon, too much scale to be lightweight, black and gold glory, transmutes this body all shimmer and more shine, flame too deep blue to characterize gold. And they call her a wildling, and this is often her shadow that she listens to the roar in her chest, lets it vibrate through what was, fallen away and shake the very ground she walks on, shatter the past and twinkle at pantheon of gods she no longer worships, and lets her spine pull apart skin, become a whole new beast too terrifying to subdue. She seeks the moon and glows up a crown, lets the moths guide her speech. Reminder to swallow herself whole. She be untethered beauty, blood beat muscle of an ember. She follows the light, pathways revealed on step, chases the precipice, olive calcite stalactite tips become ribs. She embodies this and then echoes it, ascends into the magic, follows wrists to palm and conjures her history in ocean against dry land, drowns in the promise of plenty, a royal pursuit in this moment, discovers itself wound up in mass and laid on cedar canopy, a dive into dark, discovers what wraps wrists a halo thread of tether, tucked neatly twixt ventricles and vested vein, unbroken exchange, she be a body full span spread on a forest floor. Knees softly bent, wetness beckons body forward. She obliges and lifts her hips to lips and swallows and licks, burrows into coffee dark thighs and listens for the yes on her own breath, builds a bridge to source and calls it ribs strung up like cage, body over troubled water, mouth so open she begins to form word, a moan, so soft it becomes often a syllable, a breath so deep it transforms sound. She be a gesture, lip to fingertip and an exhale, a yes in each step. Thanks.
That was Imani Sims, everyone. Wow. Oh my God. I'm just going to take a shower right now and that was hot. Oh my God. All right. Next up, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our other guest author, panelist, the author of Hood Witch and an editor for Borderlands Review. So yes, you want to get your copy of Hood Witch. Felita Hicks is also very much a Scorpio with a chakra fuchsia hue. Without any further ado, let's give it up for the one and only Felita Hicks.
Hi guys. It was either this or red, and I just chose this one. So long story short, I got COVID. My uncle got COVID. My grandfather got COVID. They both passed away. The work I've been doing for the last year is working with Detention Watch Network, which is an organization meant to kind of help empower people who have been held in detention centers and work on, of course, the fight to completely abolish all prisons and jails and detention centers across the US. Specifically, I spent several months working with not just people who had been formerly detained in detention centers or in jails like myself, but people who were queer, who were trans, and people who have, non-binary definitions. And there's a lot of mixture in between the conversation about incarceration and detention, as much as it is about how we see ourselves in our bodies and how our bodies are attacked. And so I'm going to read a poem that I'm working on. It's not finished. It's long as, am I allowed to curse on this? Okay, it's long as fuck.
I say yes, but
It's long as fuck, but I'm only gonna read a few parts of it. I'm just gonna put this timer on so I can look at myself. All right. It's called How to Burn the Fields and Bring Back the Crops. It was originally for Susana Chavez from Juarez, but this is now for the named and unnamed women whose deaths did not make the national news. 1. Do not call us by our dead names. My sister yells to the border patrol agent, her mouth falling open, overrun with the smoke of lavender. A woman, still wearing her sex, long and large between her legs. She is underloved, but alive. She exists. No trabeo, pero una mujer, una belleza perdida. Another born, running loose in the Chihuahuan desert. Her name is a mirror of names flooding the digital prayers I receive hourly via inbox. An email from the activist named Susana dice, la violencia contra la mujer, el feminicidio, me sigue sin cansarse dentro y fuera de Juarez. This smoke, ella dice, tastes like a factory. Ven acá, mijas, nos vamos de Juarez. It has only been 7 days since she sent the message, pero where she exists now, no sé. 2. The lavender orchid vine survives into the low 20s. It can recover, even if frozen to the ground. This is all I needed to know, so I turn off the 24-hour news coverage with its glowing videos of the indignant Black women from yesterday's rally, some in their 20s, pacing outside of the governor's mansion, bracketed by the fences of the manicured grounds, their mask, a dermis tagged in the nettled dialects of their dead, their chins poised so much like the galled brown women from the Pearsall Immigrant Detention Center just 40 minutes away. Their heads floating over the heads of their children, falling flat and frozen to the ground. Their smoke follows me from my living room into my kitchen, from my kitchen into my bed, and I fall asleep wondering if I-10 is a swallow of the unflowered, an inflorescence slithering through the meaty brown thigh of the Southwest, up the long Black neck of Houston, down through the empty womb of Corpus Christi. I think the highway has always been a violence, slowly severing us from our names. 3. Faye. I say in LA, my name is Faye. It is less than 10 minutes before I am Fea. Su nombre es Fea. The whole class is tickling my fist. The whole class is teaching me how to pronounce my anger. Fealita. I am Fealita. My name is Fealita, I say in Texas. Me llamo Fealita, me gusta hablar en español. It is how I survived my name. It is how I learned how to build a bridge already burnt down. It is how I learned the secret about being transmutable and alchemist. Como se dice both? I asked the internet about Faye, not Fea. Find I am a fairy. How strange, I say. And to the waxing curls of the white girl from theater class, she nods and tickles my face. How strange. Behind the hollow gray pylon in the middle of the stage, in the middle of the play. How strange, the director says, when I miss my cue, when the others say my name, Faye. It is my mother's middle name. My middle name is my father's middle name. The names are the only inheritance I am assured, and yet deliver my last name. I call it my last shame, Hicks. The epitome of rape range. I trick my mouth into spitting out at the open mic, and the crowd goes mild. No one knows what I mean when I say they forget from whence I came, from crude oil and butane. Can't help it, it's ingrained. 4, burn. And 5, burn. How many times must we be buried before we can fist back the night? Isn't that growth? Coming up out of the ground again, our bodies covered in carbon-soaked soil, our thick hair flowering out from under someone else's wheels, our arms dangling over the fence's perch, our prayers climbing the walls of every house on every street, our seeds surviving the summer's thirst. And when I say ours, I mean mine. It is what I do best. Survive, no matter the terrain. It is a perfected practice, this unnurtured love for the land I come up out of. 6, when I finally crawl out from between the legs of a woman with my name slathered across her chin, cradle the lewd silk of our evocative venom up against the hot swell of my caged chest, wade out the front door and into the murky billows of the damned and the damnable, march up the street past the auto-zoned, past the targeted, into the arrest of our uncivility, into the arrest of our love, a black light of adoration swinging over a crowd of blooming orchids, a long and hungry field of fertile sediment, where from all my mothers have come, I will lay down to sleep, a sojourn of our smoldering years.
That was Felita Hicks. Everybody make some noise for the one and only Felita Hicks. Welcome all the way from Texas, but right here. Our final panelist and author is Kaming Chang. Thank you so much. Kaming is right now in Southern California. Kaming is a Pisces with a Gemini moon and a Scorpio rising. Born in the year of the tiger. September, you want to get their book. You want to get Bestiary. So congratulations as that is forthcoming. Without any further ado, I turn it over to the one and only Kaming Chang.
Hi all, thank you so much for your readings. Wow, I'm so blown away. I'll be reading a really short prose piece. I'm wondering if it might be helpful for me to share screen, if that makes it more accessible for people to follow along. But I also know that it's probably really small on the YouTube screen. So I'm not sure if you would rather see my face or it would be helpful to see the text.
I can maybe we could see your up to you is what Dave said.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll read it out loud then. This is called Asymmetry. I cut my mother's hair every month since her hands went wild. They're rabid, boomeranging around the room, returning every touch twice as hard, slapping her face when she's asleep, ambushing mosquitoes, crawling under the sofa like rodents. I cut her hair shorter in the front than in the back. She likes asymmetry, the unevenness of things. She claims that's why she fell in love with my father. He had one eye that was double-lidded and one eye that was single-lidded, one smaller than the other, which my mother called Long Feng Yan, dragon phoenix eyes, a sign of good luck. Eyes like coins, like currency, spending themselves empty. Every month, I spray my mother's hair from the roots to the tips, trace the cowlick on her scalp, trim away the bleach brittle ends. Unlike her, I prefer symmetry. I cut my own hair in a bob so abrupt that my friends call me a cartoon character. I like straight lines, pleats, windows that are perfectly square, cornered light. I don't like things that hinge or open by themselves, like doors or mouths or paths. The woman who taught me at cosmetology school had a haircut like my mother's, asymmetrical, red highlights, bangs dangling over one eye. One day in class, she volunteered to be my practice customer. I kept looking at her face in the mirror instead of at her hair, at my own hands, and so I nicked her by accident. the left ear tip. I touched my tongue to her ear, sucked away the blood. It was instinct, I told her later, but she still expelled me. Said I needed to learn limits. How could I explain that whenever I saw blood, I could only imagine it inside my own mouth? That once, days after I spoke back to my father, and he slapped me, one of my eyes was swollen shut, and the other remained open. How I couldn't bear to look at the asymmetry of my eyes in the mirror, one dragon, one phoenix, wondering what woman could fall in love with looking this way. Thank you.
And that was Taming Chang, everyone. Wow. Let's give it up for all four of our phenomenal writers, our phenomenal guests, our panelists. Wow. All right. So we're going to break it down. This panel is about decentering the poetic narratives and claiming space. So I'm going to throw this question out to all of our guests. For me, starting at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, I was the first openly queer person in 1993 to write and perform with gay content, also being Filipino. No one has ever seen that before. And what I knew needed to happen, no one was going to do anything for me. I had to just really put myself out there, sometimes endangering myself, sometimes taking risks. Sometimes it paid off, sometimes it didn't. I'd like to think that it is a lot easier now, but I always know that it's always a struggle. And while old problems have dissipated, there's always new things that arise. So I would like to hear from each of you, just to share a little bit of the struggle to just be the writer that you are now, and what helped you and what were the challenges. And so whoever would like to just jump in, feel free to do that.
I'll jump in. One of the things that's I've been running up against is this feeling of being two-sided in almost everything. Like I don't pass for Latinx. I don't in a traditional space, and I don't pass for non-binary in some other spaces. Like there's this assumption about who I am all the time, and I'm always worried that I have to like be explicit in my writing. That look, I'm not just this. There are other parts to me. But when I'm telling the story, like I can't get to the part where I talk about what non-binary means to me if I don't tell you the beginning and how I learned what didn't work for me. I can't talk about my sexuality before telling what didn't work and how I figured that out along the way. And so I think sometimes there's this need to hurry up and get to the sex part so that I can explain that to other people. And I do literally mean the sex part, because a lot of people see me and perceive me as just straight, and that's a conversation, or as just a woman. And I'm like, there are other things. So that's my comment.
Thelita, thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump on to that. I think that struggle is really real for Lita. Thank you for setting us off with that. For me, I came into writing in a very non-traditional way. So I didn't go to get my MFA, although I have always written, always told stories since as far back as I can remember. I was the person at at my home during holidays where like my other younger cousins would put on dance kind of performances for the family. You know how that goes if you were from a of color family. The kids give the entertainment at every holiday. I was the person who was like, oh, I have a story I want to read everyone. Like I wasn't doing the Michael Jackson kind of rendition. I was performing what I wrote. But I never thought, I always looked at writing and looked at creativity as being a hobby because I was poverty born. Being born in Bed-Stuy, being born in Bushwick in the 1980s, being a child of the crack epidemic, writing, storytelling, what the fuck is that? That's not going to pay your bills. So, I come from an African-American family, poor, and they were like lawyer, doctor, business person. Those are the options, right? And so I became a lawyer ultimately. And it wasn't until after I had been a lawyer for a decade, I was a prosecutor. I prosecuted police. But I was also, talk about the complexities of our humanity, Faylida, I also committed a crime, which ushered me into becoming a felon after I had been a career prosecutor. And so it was in the becoming a felon, in the trauma of that, that there was a lot of things happening at that time spiritually also that pointed me in this direction, that I knew that I needed to be writing about that trauma. I needed to be writing about how a career prosecutor could also be a criminal and how poverty was a thing that connected the two, right? Because even when I was a lawyer, I was still very much so impoverished, particularly considering student loan debt and the subsequent, credit card debt to try to find some equilibrium. Be that as it may, I found in now coming into that writing journey, the hardest part, the biggest challenge, to go to your question, was access. I find that when it comes to learning craft, there's all kinds of financial prohibitions, if you will. This is an expensive industry. And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that writing was an industry. I didn't understand that the arts was an industry. For me, it had always been this healing hobby, right? And so when I was looking into, okay, I know how to write as a lawyer, but now I need to learn how to write as a creative and trying to figure out that craft, I couldn't afford it. So that was the first thing. The second challenge was, all right, now that I have like scraped together coins from dog walking, from nannying, from doing like jobs that I could do as a felon, someone who had a record, now that I'm in these spaces, I'm not seeing myself, right? I'm seeing whiteness, I'm seeing straightness, I'm seeing men, I'm not seeing myself. So those were some of the challenges for me: money and also representation. And once I realized that that was happening throughout the industry, I also recognized, all right, well, it was up to me to create spaces that were affordable, but also reflected the experiences of queer, transgender, non-conforming, Black, Indigenous, Brown people of color, period, right? Because there aren't many opportunities for us to learn craft in a way that we're not sacrificing a month's rent, and in a way that we're seeing ourselves and centering ourselves on the page.
I'm going to jump in real quick and respond to that, because biopic people are expected to do shit for free. We are expected to do it for a lower rate. And, we want to be accessible to our community and our community members. But also there are people who don't have our experience, who are charging hundreds and thousands of dollars for their service. And we kind of like want to find that balance, right? So that's a great point. Like, how do we be accessible to the people coming up behind us? And also, how do we make this money? Because if other people are making that money, we need to be taking up just as much space as they do.
The fact. I want to hop on that real quick. To the point of access and like not seeing oneself inside of the industry, I think that was also one of my struggles. That was the reason why I pushed up against, the traditional structure of getting my MFA, because I didn't see myself inside of this very like institutionalized idea of writing. And my creativity wasn't for that. And so I think as we grow in the craft and as we push ourselves to continue to create, part of our work in like accessing our intuition, accessing our ancestors in order to create, is then teaching that to others. Because fucking MFA, quite honestly, because what is that telling anyone about where the magic, where the power, where that fuel comes from, right? No one can tell you the magic of your own story. Those are my 2 cents.
Yes. Ming, I wanted to ask you, because when I was starting, Kundiman was just forming, and it wasn't. And I know that you're a Kundiman fellow. I was fortunate to be one of the writing mentors there. Was Kundiman a catalyst for you when you started early, or did you have other challenges or breaks that helped you?
Yeah, no, Kundiman was definitely a really beautiful place that also taught me. I think a lot of times, like, there's this expectation, or at least I definitely felt this of like, oh, you're supposed to have a mentor. Like, you're supposed to have this person who will like take you on and guide you through this entire process. But oftentimes, having a mentor requires a lot of institutional access. And so I was kind of like, I don't know, I felt like it was a personal failing that I didn't have a mentor. And that it was like completely, it was me like not being good enough, things like that. And I think one thing that I learned at Kundiman and also from just like being friends with people and learning that there's a kind of like horizontal community that is so much so that is so powerful and incredible is yeah, like realizing that I couldn't just like sit around and wait for like, oh, this mentor figure to pop up and like pluck me from somewhere as I had imagined. And that actually the people around me were the people who were creating things that I was most excited about and that who I wanted to learn from more than, you know, any specific professor or, you know, kind of institutional, like academic teacher or anything like that. Yeah.
Right. I'm respond. Thank you, Kaming. I'm responding to what Felita says. No one tells you how to get a mentor. You have to mentor yourself. This is something that I had to learn. I saw clicks and clacks. I was never a part of that. Um, and the gay men who could have mentored me all died because of the AIDS crisis. So I'm just happy that I've lived long and I could, you know, I'm fortunate to reap in the fruits of the work that I've been doing and fortunate to still perform and write. I want to throw out this question to everyone. This pandemic has brought and showed all of the inequities. And I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, and every arts institution is going through inner crises of sexual assaults, allegations in dance companies, theater being racist practice in theaters, in storytelling communities, the controversy with Poetry Foundation. I just want to ask how, and some of us are publishers and editors, how are we supposed to maneuver as we try to move forward, as we get through this pandemic? How do we respond to this? And do you feel confident that this will make us better and that the community will be better? And there's a lot of things that erupted with that controversy, and particularly, and I forget the poet who said it, but someone who benefited from one of the Poetry Foundation fellowships, saying that as a person of color, they were complicit in the privilege, which I think is really, really powerful. So I'm putting some of that in terms of claiming our space, and just want to see how people respond to that.
So unfortunately, as an editor, because I'm the editor in chief, right? And what's particular to know about that is I started as the managing editor. I was the person who just worked on editing poems and making sure things are spelled correctly and making sure commas were where they were supposed to be. And then I became editor in chief, which is essentially a role about fundraising and making sure that, like, you know, internal hiring practices are equitable and so on and so forth. Like I changed roles. I was handed a nonprofit that is literary based. That's been around since 1992. It was founded by primarily white people who were cis in Austin, Texas. Right? I was handed this magic piece. You know, a nonprofit is really particular about how it gets its money. Nonprofits are much more likely to get funding than organizations that are not nonprofit, because you have to go through like an application process, all these other things. But what I noticed is that the minute I got handed the keys, which was February 2020, you know, right in the middle of the pandemic starting, and then all the things that happened after that, including the protests, marches, is that there's very little, there was no training. No one told me how to do anything. If I wanted to learn how to do something, I had to go look it up. If I wanted to know how to get people who are people of color hired and get them supported, I have to create a whole new system that doesn't exist yet. I have to say, what's going to make sure that my manager, my managing editor doesn't feel overwhelmed, is getting the consistent feedback that they need to grow professionally as well as artistically, because they're writers. How do I bring on volunteers without using their service and not giving them any sort of compensation? Like, how can I give them value? I think about value when it comes to people of color. I was able to bring on like 15 people of color to be a part of my staff. I'm very excited about that, because it had never happened before in the journal. The journals only had like 4 or 5 people. And this was the first time that like I was the first Black femme, non-binary queer person to be the managing editor. And then I brought on somebody who identifies as LGBTQIA and Latinx. Like it's a big thing that you do not see in the publishing community. What happened with Poetry Foundation and what's happening across the board with every arts organization is we've had enough time to sit at home and get upset about it and say we're not taking it anymore. George Floyd wasn't just George Floyd. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, that whole entire week of events was just kind of like, you know what? I'm tired of your mess. There's a last nerve that you can get on, and that was the last nerve for many people across the industry, industries. And I think what we're going to see is significant change. Penguin Random House, I'll keep saying it. If you are wanting to be in the editorial department of a publishing company, Penguin Random House now officially has an internship specifically for people of color from underrepresented backgrounds. You do not have to have a college degree, no college degree required, and you will get paid to intern from them, and you don't have to move to New York. From your home, sitting on your couch, you can intern for Penguin Random House, the #1 publishing house in the world. And that's really important because they say, can you be hired within the next year or two? Are you going to be available to be hired within the next year or two? Opportunities that did not exist even 6 months ago are now available. And I'm hoping that people see that this is the time for us. Ask for everything you want. Ask for that pay raise, ask for that publication, ask for that position, and take up your space, because now is the time. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Felita. I'm going to throw out another question for you all in terms of reclaiming space. I don't think you can do that until you make space for yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but it's just more apparent now. I just turned 50 in the pandemic. Happy birthday to me. But the thing that I realized is that self-care is important. And being 50, I can't throw myself on the wall like spaghetti. So before I make or try to own space or claim space, I have to feel good about my space and that what I am doing is relevant and meaningful, and I provide something that no one else can provide. This is as a teaching artist, as a poet, as a literary curator, as a publisher. What does self-care mean, and how have you found that space for yourself?
Oh, I'm gonna hop on it. Okay, the first thing I want to say about self-care is that it's not a little fluffy land where everybody takes baths and, you know, niggas wash their hair every day and condition it and comb it out and shit. Self-care is literally what feels good to you today. So when I wake up in the morning and I have a 9 a.m. meeting, before I go, I'm like, Imani, what's gonna feel good for you to do today, right now, right here, before you step into this meeting? I'm gonna make my ass a sickening ass cup of Earl Grey, drop some oat milk in it with some honey, and I'm gonna sit my ass down. Like, How is it that you're staying present with the things that you need in order to access joy right here, right now? This ain't a plan. So everybody who's watching, you got homework because I'm a teacher. So when you wake up tomorrow, I literally just want you to ask yourself, what's going to make me happy right here, right now, in this moment? Don't need no plan, don't need access to shit. What's going to make me happy right now? And I think that's the thing that is deterring so many BIPOC folks who are on the front lines, so many folks who are doing the work in the trenches, whether that's creative work, whether that's we're teaching classes, whether that's we're dropping off meals to protesters. Take fucking time to rest. Oh my God. Take a nap or something. What is going to help you continue to do this work? Those are my 2 cents.
Thank you, Imani. Well said there. Right now, where I'm at is trying to create in this space. And so I just want to, we only have a few minutes left. Oh, well, relatively, but I'd love everyone to respond. This question is multi-layered. So what are you working on now? And I mean that in an open, what are you working on now as a result of the pandemic? That doesn't necessarily mean creative work. And yes, what are you working on and how is the pandemic shaping those decisions? Because I can tell you that I have been prolific. I haven't written like this since I was 23. I'm writing a play that's for Zoom. So this kind of creative space that I'm in is something that I haven't had in a long time, but it's all right if you're not creative at this point. So I just wanted to hear what you're working on now and how is this space affecting your process?
I'll jump in. So once things popped off late February, early March, I had just come out to LA. I was only intending to be in LA for a couple of weeks. But then I was like really fearful of going home. I lived with my then 98-year-old grandmother. She just turned 99 last week. And so I didn't want to bring anything back home. So it was an unintended move to LA. And then it became survival mode. Okay, now I'm in LA, I gotta make some money, I'm gonna teach some more. I would say since the middle of March until now, I've taught at least 24 workshops and had at least 300 different students. And that becomes emotionally, psychologically, intellectually exhausting. And so I haven't been writing creatively as much as I would have liked to have written. And I think that that's great. There's a lot of expectation around, I think, Black writers in particular right now, to document and memorialize all of the things that we're going through in the same ways that there are expectations of Black women and Black people and Black writers in general to explain the conditions of oppression within this country. And I don't really think that that is our burden to fucking bear, And so during this pandemic, and during the uprisings, my focus has been to help other BIPOC folk figure out how to write their own nonfiction stories, right? Write the stories of their lives that are really being triggered by this moment. And I think that's as creative as it has gotten. My partner though is like, yo, we need to get you back to the page because you have deadlines and pages are due and people are expecting them. So, the workshops are wrapping up this week and we're jumping back into the page. But I really wanted to just be clear that you're not just, and we know this, right? You're not just being creative when you're sitting in front of the page and actually writing the thing, right? You're also being creative when you are taking in all that's happening in the environs around you, right? When you are kind of Rolodexing, if you will, the circumstances and the emotions that brings up and the historic encounters that triggers. And so for me, this time, the pandemic, the uprisings have definitely triggered many different memories. I live in the nonfiction world most often. that I will be writing about, but I need time to actually process the feelings, right? To excavate what is historic about it, right? Not only the things that are blatantly historic, but what are the things that are buried beneath those connections that need to be made in order to, when I really get to the page, to be full and to be vulnerable and honest. But I think with all of the things that are happening right now, with all of the chaos, with all of the relived trauma, with all of the new trauma, it's important to kind of take note of what's happening while it's hot, but not necessarily to dig in and want to produce and publish in this moment. Let other people do the explaining and other people do that shit. The people who have the privilege of not being so directly impacted by it all.
Thank you so much. Well said. Um,
I want
Felita.
I want to share, but mostly just because I was trying to make space for other people. If you want to share, try to keep it quick. January 2010 is when a really good friend of mine died from the slam, Gabrielle Boulain. And then April 2010 is when my fiance died. And then May 2nd was the 10-year anniversary of my my incarceration, right? So this year has been a year of anniversaries, a year of pivotal moments. I met K-Ming Chang and I met Nicole, both in nonfiction workshops, because I was working on a project and I'm still working on that project. And the project starts in 2010 with my arrest and it ends in 2020, which is happening right now. And there's no way that I could have like predicted what would happen in 2020. But I knew that it had to end 10 years later. I knew that it had to be 10 years. And there are so many things that are happening now that directly are reflected in 2010 in my life personally. The journey that it took to go from 2010 to get here and to still be alive after everything that happened, right? To still be here and present. And so I'm a little bit opposite to Nicole at this point. I can't stop writing. I honestly, I woke up about 15 minutes before we got on this chat thing, and I put on all of this makeup and I put on the clothes because I was trying to wake up, because I don't go to sleep anymore. I spend all night writing and I spend all night creating. And it's, if anything, like my head is kind of trying to connect all of the things that it means, knowing that this is a historical moment, knowing that this is going down in history as one of the largest movements in the US's history. I want to be present for every part of it. And I get upset that I can't be out there with the people who are on the ground and the people who are doing the work, whether it be policy, whether it be like actually protesting, whether it be people who are just trying to get people safe and home. There are so many things that are happening and so many people have lost people, and it's a time of grief. And I think the most important point of it all is that I really like that Amani said self-care, how to access joy right now. I have been so selfish in the last several months. And I mean, so selfish. I got me a therapist, right? I said $600 a month for a therapist makes sense because I fucking need one at this point, right? I got me a bed. I've been sleeping on the floor for the last 10 years. I got me a dresser in the back. Y'all can see that. I haven't had one in 10 years. And I said, you know what, right now, I have to be a selfish, whatever I need to make sure I don't lose my mind. And if it costs a couple of extra dollars, that's what we finna do. And even having to step away from some positions because I just can't. I love people and I want to be there for everyone and I want to help others, but sometimes I just really fucking need me. And so it's been a really important moment. That's my 2 cents.
Felita, thank you. We are nearing the end of this panel. I am just so inspired by all of you. I think what has come up in this conversation and during this pandemic is like, are we worthy? What is our worth? And I know that in March, my work as a teaching artist was dependent on people who wanted me to be there, and could I be there and could I connect? So I think that said, um, what advice do you have for emerging writers? This goes back to the beginning. We talked a little bit about that struggle, but what you know now and like what you could have told yourself then, kind of thing. So I'm hoping that we could sort of close this workshop with um, some positivity and just something to hold with. And I will start, and I'm just going to pass it to all of you. Someone wanted a teaching artist, government contract. They did not know what they're doing, and they just messed it all up. And they said, well, we'll pay you this, and we'll pay all the teaching artists this. And I'm like, no, I'm not like other teaching artists. I have been doing this for a long time. You don't know what you're doing. I didn't say that, but I'm not like other teaching artists. What I'm offering is something that no one else can offer here. And so I can't believe that I said that. It took me 50 years for this gay Filipino boy from Southern Maryland to stand up and said, no, I am not like other teaching artists. And I couldn't believe that came out of my mouth. And so I want to leave that moment. And then I just want to see if everyone can just leave us with that kind of moment. And with anyone, Ming or Imani.
I think for me, what this moment has taught me is to slow the fuck down, and to really access my ancestors who literally transferred magic through the blood in my body, and to say, okay, this thing is happening and I don't know what to do with it. So council, I need you to step up and step in. And I think that is the best advice that I can give. Sit in council with those that gave you the magic that is within your own body.
Imani, I'm so glad you said that, because literally I was thinking the same thing. I wrote down, tap into spirit. I sit at my Boveda every day and listen. I sit at my computer and I'm like, yo, I know this ain't me. I know all I am is a vessel. Open up yourself to being that vessel. Period. Tap into spirit. Thank you, Imani, for sharing that word.
I just want to jump on that. When the I am not a virus, all of the anti-Asian hate was happening, I just responded with, I wish people could see our ancestors, and that it's not about me, but it is beyond me. See my ancestors. Let's see the lineage, and not this present this facade. And I think that the pandemic is saying we've got to go back to sort of our pagan roots, where the sun is important, and each day the sun and the earth becomes more important. Ming, any thoughts?
Yeah. Wow. I'm thinking about so many things. Yeah. My grandfather's family is from Wuhan. And so I feel like I've been in terror since 2019, since December 2019. And so I feel like I'm also grieving a place, as well as, people. And yeah, I think that grief, I don't know, for me, I don't really know if I have advice, but I think one thing that I've been struggling with is a lot of like shame and guilt, that I think has followed me throughout my entire writing life. And so, yeah, learning how to kind of wrestle with shame and guilt, and writing past that towards like possibility and potential, and new futures. Yeah, that's something that's been on my mind.
We are at 7:30 right now. I want to, Marlena Chertak and Dave Ring, I don't know if you want to pop out to come out of your the box. And if you have anything that you would like to say, I am so privileged and honored and inspired by what everyone has shared. I am a new fan of all of your work, and thank you so much for inspiring me and also being part of this event. Did not have to happen, um, and so the resiliency that Marlena and Dave and everyone at Center Arts has done. Kudos and thank you so much. Um, I guess y'all are incredible. And Honey says, how can I follow you on all the social media? I think I have websites from folks. I know kmingchang.com, Imani Alchemy in a is that alchemy in a bar? Alchemyinabar.com. Felita, I don't have a website, but if you go Reggie Kubico, you'll find me.
www.felitahicks.com, at Felita Hicks on all the things. Please
Thank
help
you.
me writing a book proposal. All of it.
Thank you so much. And Nicole, do you have a website or Twitter or anything?
Of course, you got to nowadays, right? So it's www.NicoleShawanJr.com. I put it in the chat. And I'm at Nicole Shawan Jr. on Instagram and Facebook, and at Nicole Shawan on Twitter.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaming Chang, Imani Sims, Felita Hicks, and Nicole Shawan Jr. Thank you all so much. Stay queer and loud and get that money. And you are worthy. And yes, we will get through this tunnel.